this question. What can I do now when I'm lonely? What can I do now that would be difficult to do with others around? What can I do now that would be difficult to do with others around? You see, Paul is saying, if I can't be where the action is, I'd love to be out there preaching in Rome. I will create some action right here in my own cell. And you need to do that too when you're lonely. If I can't be where the action is, I will at least create some action where I am doing what I'm doing. And I'll utilize the time for good and not just waste it. Utilize my time. Number two, minimize my hurt. That's the second thing you do when you go through a season of loneliness. I need to minimize my hurt. I need to play it down, de-emphasize it. I say play it down and pray it up. Don't rehearse it over and over in your mind, because if you do that, it just gets bigger and bigger. Oh, I'm so lonely, I'm so lonely, oh, I'm so lonely. It just gets out of control. Refuse to become resentful, because bitterness will eat you up. So you minimize the hurt. You play it down. You say, well, it's no big deal. Look at Paul's attitude, verse 16. He says, everybody has deserted me. He went on trial before Nero. Nobody came to his defense. He said, may it not be held against them. Do you understand this? Here is Paul, the greatest Christian, as I said, next to Jesus. And when he goes on trial in Rome, not one person stepped forward to defend him. Not one. He is absolutely by himself. Nobody stepped forward and said, hey, this guy's a good guy. He's all right. And yet his whole attitude was not, oh, those jerks, after all I've done for them all these years. Instead, it was, may it not be held against them. In other words, I'm not going to let myself become bitter, because bitterness makes loneliness worse. In fact, bitterness and loneliness go together because they become a cycle. You become lonely, and then you start feeling bad about it and having a pity party, and then you get bitter. Your bitterness makes you even more lonely, which makes you more bitter, which makes you more lonely, which makes you more bitter, which makes you more lonely, which makes you more bitter, and pretty soon you're just a hard-hearted, depressed person that nobody could get close to. Nobody wants to be around a bitter person. Nobody wants to be around a cynic. Nobody wants to be around a person who's angry at everybody else. And so your bitterness only perpetuates your loneliness. That's why when you go through a season of life, you have to minimize the hurt. Utilize the time, minimize the hurt. Don't build a wall around your life. Number three, recognize God's presence. Recognize God's presence. Verse 17, Paul says, everybody left me. They'd all deserted me. But, he says, the Lord stood by my side and gave me strength. Recognize God's presence. When you're lonely, where is God? He's where he's always been, right beside you.